Let's get peppy! We're back here on a Friday again with Dr. Dave for Pepisode 79. Dr. Dave, how you going there?
Good afternoon. I'm going fine here in lockdown.
Tell us who you are, as always. Tell us
All right. I am Associate Professor David Smith from the University of Sydney.
And I am a dude on TV. Let's start with some housekeeping. This is a story we haven't talked about for a very long time, Dave. A little update. Remember Matt Gaetz? Matt Sexcapades Gaetz?
I'm not going to forget Matt Gaetz.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you remember how there was the suggestion that he might get done for sex trafficking at one point in time, and he was saying he was being extorted and all the rest of it. It was very complicated. Essentially, there was a plan that what apparently happened was that there was a plan for Matt Gaetz' dad, who was very rich, to pay $25 million to a guy to help fund the exfiltration of an American spy in Iran who hadn't been seen for decades.
Yes.
And when
he was probably dead, who is almost certainly dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then when they rescued him, then Matt Gaetz, for some reason, even though it was for his dad's money, would be a huge hero, and then he would get pardoned from the sex trafficking charges, which he may or may not have had levelled against him. That was the plan, right?
A typically straightforward American story, yes.
Yes. Turns out the dude in the middle of all this was just charged with fraud. He's been indicted. I guess they thought his story just made so little sense. They said, well, that's just fraud. That's not real. So anyway, actually, I wouldn't say Matt Gaetz is completely vindicated, but he's at least a little vindicated because that guy's in jail and Matt Gaetz is not, at least so far. So there you go. That's an update for you. Another update. Slightly less funny update for those who are interested in climate change. You might recall that we talked a bit about this last year, that Biden had one of his plans to deal with climate change was to stop oil and gas drilling leases on public land. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as he got in, I think it was day one, he had an executive order to do so. It was challenged in court. He lost in court. There's a procedure you're meant to go through, which they may or may not be going through. We haven't heard anything since, except for Biden has quietly restarted oil and gas drilling leases on public land. That didn't get a lot of attention.
No, that did not.
No, it did not. But that's happening. And because there was a big rush early on and for a few other factors which aren't related, it just so happened that at the beginning of the year, there was this massive rush on oil and gas drilling leases. So when you add up Biden's term so far, he's probably got more oil and gas drilling leases in his first year than Trump would have in his first year.
Yeah, I mean, from a political point of view, I can imagine Biden actually being quite happy to let that continue. When you look at the sort of that group of people in the country who could vote one way or the other, people in industries who benefited from the boom in exploration during the Trump period definitely fall into that group. And quietly letting this happen again could actually be Biden with an eye on re-election. It might not just be him giving up. That might actually be he doesn't, because this is the sort of thing where entire counties will be affected by decisions to open up or close off oil and gas drilling. And certainly I think part of what powered Trump in the 2020 election, albeit not enough to get him across the line, but what really powered him in places like South Texas and a lot of other places was just the sheer number of not just direct jobs in those industries, but, truck driving and everything else that goes to support those industries as well. So, I would suggest that Biden's probably not that upset about letting that continue.
Yep. Also, Pennsylvania, big state for gas drilling as well, big swing state for 2024. Bit of feedback. i.e. correction. From last week, I was talking about the drone strike on the car that was right next to a bunch of apartments, and I made the point that if the strike had just missed by 10 metres, who knows how many people could have been killed in those apartment buildings. I've been corrected by two people, Uncle Phil and Mike Stevens. Hi, guys. Who said that they used a Hellfire missile. That's what Predators fire, and it won't take out the building unless it's a little wooden bungalow. They carry a shaped charge for hitting armoured vehicles. The actual explosive power is relatively small. The whole airport is surrounded by apartments, so I'm not sure how long they should have waited. You guys know your politics, but commentary on military tactics isn't your thing. I'll own that.
Okay. Can I just ask, is Uncle Phil your uncle or?
No, he's not.
Okay, right. So this is someone who calls himself Uncle Phil.
Yes, my uncles know a lot less about weaponry and are a lot weirder. So yes, and they definitely do not watch anything I produce. Let's get off the housekeeping though. Let's get into Afghanistan stuff. With one day we're not going to speak for 12 hours about Afghanistan in these podcasts. I think today might be a day. Maybe it might only be half an hour or so. We'll see. We'll find out. Has Biden done a good job on withdrawal? He's currently a 27% to 71% proposition for Biden. That's 27% say he did a good job. Even Democrats are split, 43% approving of his job to 55% in Afghanistan. 54% of the same people in that same poll said withdrawal was the right decision. So they haven't gone all hawkish. They just thought he screwed it up. 61% is Pew. 61% of Republicans view the Taliban being in charge as being a major security threat to America. 33% of Democrats do. And that's interesting because that's basically now official US policy to support the Taliban in Afghanistan at the moment. They're doing deals and they're working together and so forth. Cautiously. And the other poll which I wanted to add before I then throw to you, Dave, to just see what general thoughts you have. The Afghanistan war is becoming partisan in hindsight. Now it's defunct. 29% of Republicans say invading Afghanistan in 2001 was the wrong decision, to 54% of Democrats who are now saying that invading Afghanistan in 2001 was the wrong decision, which is interesting because I thought the conventional wisdom had become, invading was okay, but then we should have got out a lot faster, like after 2 months or 3 months, rather than tried to rebuild the whole nation. And I don't know. First of all, what are your thoughts about that? What are your thoughts about anything to do with Afghanistan, Dave, before we move on to more Afghanistan stuff?
On this question of was it a mistake initially, certainly the consensus in the US at the time was so heavily behind it. I mean, as we've talked about ad nauseum, there was one vote across more than 500 votes in Congress against the 2001 authorization of the use of military force. And also there was, so much support from the rest of the world, even from countries who would never go near something like the invasion of Iraq. So, after 9/11, there was just, maybe something like that should be a time of reflection rather than immediate reaction. But it's never going to be, right? So the invasion of Afghanistan was, whether it was a mistake or not, it was essentially inevitable. But when we look at critical junctures, okay, so leaving aside the question of whether the original invasion was a mistake, there was certainly another critical juncture that was definitely a mistake, probably the biggest mistake made in the entire 20 years. In November 2001, the Taliban was completely on the run. They copped the full force of the coalition military enterprise, and they wanted to negotiate a way out. Right, they were going to Hamid Karzai's government through back channels looking to surrender. And the condition that they wanted for surrender was amnesty. Now, while it's true that very few people trust the Taliban and you don't know what actually would have happened, the fact that what they were asking for was amnesty suggested a mechanism by which actually a lot of Taliban would have disarmed and gone back to ordinary lives. That what they were actually after was, making some kind of new life rather than continuing the struggle. Donald Rumsfeld, as Secretary of Defense, who is no longer here to defend himself, said no. The US is not interested in negotiating a surrender. We are interested in wiping the Taliban out. We don't want Mullah Omar living out his days in exile somewhere. We want to kill and imprison the Taliban leaders. Now that, in retrospect, was a massive, massive mistake, abetted by the other huge mistake, which was, of course, the invasion of Iraq, which meant that resources were diverted away from, if the US actually had wanted to beat the Taliban into smithereens, they didn't have the resources to do it anymore, especially after the Taliban fled into the mountains. Now, that seems absolutely ludicrous in hindsight, but again, it's a hindsight issue. And remembering the atmosphere in the United States at the time, I don't know if any polling was done, but if it had been, it probably would have been absolutely behind Donald Rumsfeld saying, God, fuck no, we're not going to let these guys surrender. We're not going to let them have an amnesty. You know, we're not going to let them live. We're going to wipe them out, on the assumption that it would have been fairly easy to wipe them out after having removed them from power so easily. So, you know, if you're going to look at one mistake in all of this, that seems like a really, really crucial mistake. Not negotiate. And this should be, I'm afraid that it won't be, but this should be one of the major lessons is if you've got your opponent into a position where the only surrender condition that they're asking for is amnesty, take it. Now, obviously, that would have been, as I say, psychologically very difficult for the US to do at that time when the focus was so much on retribution. But we look at what has then come over the last 20 years, I would say that was the single biggest mistake. Perhaps there actually was, to come back to your original question, perhaps there actually was a possibility that the Afghanistan war could have been done in a way that actually removed the Taliban, finished them off as at least as a military force, and, you know, achieved the objectives of the Afghanistan war.
Yeah. I feel like an even more basic lesson. I mean, it's what you're talking about there, but just another word to describe what you're talking about, which I feel was a lesson that should have been learnt over and over and over again for the last 25 years and is never learnt, is humility.
Yes.
Like just America never learns humility in any context, and it just keeps on blundering over and over again. Anyway, I'll tell you something else, which I don't think has gotten much.
And of course, we are both just poster boys of humility.
Well, that's why no one's going to make either as president, Dave. There is one other mistake I read about during this week, which I thought, oh, that's really interesting. I haven't heard much about this. This is a later mistake. This is a very more recent one. But now, I think it's an underrated one. And that is what America did, the way America dealt with opium over the journey. Because you look at, Afghanistan is responsible for 85% of the world's opium supplies. And it's been damn near that the entire 20 years.
Yeah.
From about 2005, though, America decided to end that. They said, nah, we don't like this. This is our war on drugs, etc. So they went out of their way to destroy a whole bunch of opium crops. And then at the same time, they said to the farmers, we don't want you to starve. You know, we're here to help you. So here is a lot of fertilizer and here are some seeds and you can grow all these other crops instead of opium, right? Now, that's a fine try, but what happens when you reduce the supply of poppy seeds is you make the price of poppies rise, but you don't affect the demand because the price of poppy seeds are rising in Afghanistan is a tiny, tiny, tiny proportion of the final cost of the drug. Because the major cost of the drug is the cost of running an international crime syndicate, right? And also all the transport, the proceeds of crime, all the rest of it. And so the price can go as high as you like. It can be 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. It won't affect the demand. And so there's so much more incentive for them to keep on growing poppies at higher and higher prices. And the Americans kept on going. The Taliban said, on the other hand, tell you what, in our area, you can grow poppies. And so what ended up happening is, first of all, it helped the Taliban win the countryside, which they kept. And secondly, the Taliban taxed them. And it was a massive source of illicit money for the Taliban, which they then used down the road to be money bags, and that would help them come back. And it's such a minor seeming decision, but I think it had such big ramifications.
I don't think it was a minor seeming decision at all, actually.
All right, we'll just talk about it.
This is yet another example of failed international drug policy prosecuted by the US. It never works.
Yep, that's fair.
And this ended up being another way in which the US actually funded the insurgency.
Yeah. Now, I spent, in the last podcast, Dave, I spent the best part of half an hour going through fair and unfair criticisms of what happened in Afghanistan. Do you want to weigh in with any criticisms that you think, or any things you felt with the withdrawal is worthy of censorship, censure, not censor?
Look, I doubt that I've got anything more to add after your half an hour.
Okay, all right, okay, well, that's fine. What I will say is that a couple of things I'll just add to some of the things I said before, so some updates. First of all, the leaving people behind thing, we talked about that for a while, where they needed to, etc. Something that's interesting is that there's this group, they call it Task Force Pineapple Express. Have you heard about these guys?
No.
They rescued, I think it was 500 or 600 people. And the reason they call themselves Pineapple Express is because they sort of signal to each other with pineapples on their phones. But I don't think they're thinking about the movie.
I was going to say, was that the group in charge of smoking all the opium? So it would say...
Well, as I say, I don't think they're thinking too much about the movie that's inevitably going to be made about them. If they're calling themselves Pineapple Express, there could be some serious confusion there. But anyway, They're still going. They're still going. They evacuated, but there were a few secret missions from the CIA to get people behind enemy lines, so to speak. But these guys, the whole time, they were rescuing Americans and I think allied Afghan allies. They're still doing it, even though the Americans have left. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think there's definitely going to be a movie made of them. But anyway, I just don't flag you on that.
But you know who should have a movie made out of him?
What's that?
Markwayne Mullin.
Go for it, Dave. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This week, I learned about the existence of Congressman Markwayne Mullin. Now, I had literally never heard of him before. He's been in Congress since 2012, Republican from Oklahoma. I've never heard of him before. And, sure, I don't obsessively memorise the names of members of Congress, but usually you hear of all of them at some point.
I do obsessively memorise them, and I hadn't heard of him.
No. And by the way, Markwayne is one name.
Yeah.
So he's even got an unusual name. So I would have thought if I'd heard of it before, I would have remembered him. There's not even that much information available about him. According to a story in the Washington Post, he grew up in Stillwell, Oklahoma. He's 44 years old. He was a standout wrestler and earned a scholarship to Missouri Valley College. Injuries derailed his athletic career, and at age 20, he took over his father's plumbing business. He was also briefly a professional mixed martial arts fighter, and after being elected to Congress in 2012, he became known on the Hill for leading intense workout classes.
It sounds to me like he would have made some great ads, some great political ads.
Oh, I'm sure he would have. So this is what he's mainly known for, intense workout classes, not legislation. Okay, so the week before, Republican Pete Meyer from Michigan and Seth Moulton had gone on this unauthorized trip to Afghanistan to oversee the evacuation. Now, Moulton and Meyer, it has to be said, are both pretty serious members of Congress. Moulton especially has a lot to do with this portfolio. Also, both of them are actually military veterans. Nonetheless, they were castigated by Nancy Pelosi and by the State Department, saying, look, this is really dangerous. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be putting yourself in harm's way where we might then, be required to use the US military to rescue you.
And to be fair to them, they didn't do pretty much any grandstanding when they came back, which I was impressed by. And they definitely thought through their trip there and back very carefully to make sure they were has as small an imprint as possible, yet they were still castigated, as you say.
As I say, these are serious people. They actually went there because they thought that it was important for them to be there to oversee this. Okay, but Markwayne Mullin, who notably has no military background, although, as a mixed martial arts, as a former professional mixed martial arts fighter, I'm sure he has at least referred to himself as a warrior. He turned up in Georgia, not Georgia as in Atlanta, Georgia, Georgia as in Tbilisi, Georgia, and demanded that the State Department let him fly on to Tajikistan, to Dushanbe, so that he could then enter Afghanistan to do a solo rescue mission of an American woman who was there with her 4 children.
So he wanted to run through the mountains, Rambo style?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay, yeah, sure.
Yes. Now, the State Department unsurprisingly said no. Can you believe it? Just because it would have involved a violation of the laws of Tajikistan, they said no. And also, this is very, very dangerous. Like, no, this is like Moulton and Meyer to the power of 1,000 in terms of the level of risk that this poses and the possibility that we will have to send US Marines in to get you out. Like, no, you are absolutely not doing this. Anyway, for a while, it wasn't clear how this was going to go because he vanished.
Did he have gear with him? Like was he playing just in a suit, just run across a mountain range?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what the plan was here, whether he was planning to hire mercenaries or really what was going on. And he vanished. But he did resurface, and he has said that he is on his way home. But he is also furious.
Hang on, did he resurface in Tajikistan?
He refuses to say where he is, other than that he is safe and he is coming home. But he is very angry. So he says, have we been helping get Americans out of Afghanistan? Yes. Is the mission continuing? Yes. Am I missing? No. Did I go dark for a little while? Yes, because it wasn't safe to be communicating. Am I extremely disappointed in how we, the United States, left Americans behind? That would be an understatement. He concluded, #ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
He's right about half of that, the ordinary people bit. Wow.
Yeah.
Do we know what his electorate's like? It's not close, is it? Like this is not.
No, I very much doubt that it's close.
Yeah.
Remember, Democrats did get a seat in Oklahoma in that wave election in 2018, but they're not usually competitive in Oklahoma. So no, I don't think that he is at any risk. Hopefully, some great footage came out of this because whatever he was doing, I'm sure this was being filmed for posterity, even if it was on a camera phone. Like, I'm sure that the ultimate aim of this was to make the greatest campaign video ever to kickstart some run at higher office.
It'll be the real life version of. Do you remember those Dan Crenshaw videos during your last election campaign of him being like an Avenger, jumping out of planes and stuff? It'd be like the real version of that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Look, part of America's problems are the fact that everything is made for video, for YouTube these days. Well, basically, all politics is YouTube politics now.
You're implying that Markwayne is a problem, but there are two schools to that. Are we learning anything else from Markwayne Mullin, or are we just sharing the story and moving on?
No. It's obviously I'm searching Google again every hour.
Okay.
But it's just the same old stuff coming back. I don't think we're going to learn any more about Markwayne until he arrives back and tells his story.
Let's hear a little bit more about what Republicans are saying about Afghanistan. Not that Republican, but some of the others. I got to say, and by the way, before what I'm about to talk about, I'm about to talk a little about Trump and so forth. I want to distinguish Ben Sasse from what I'm about to say, because He knows how to go feral. I haven't seen him go feral before, but he's pretty good at feral, I have to say. He's obviously a hawk, Ben Sasse, and you can disagree with him, but at least what he says is consistent with his worldview and it's rational criticism, unlike everything I'm about to go through. What he said was, this national disgrace is the direct result of President Biden's cowardice and confidence. Okay, fine. The president made the decision to trust the Taliban. The president made the decision to set an arbitrary August 31 deadline. The president made the decision to abandon Bagram Air Base. The president made the decision not to expand the perimeter around Karzai International Airport. The president made the decision to undermine our NATO allies. The president made the decision to break our word to our Afghan partners. The president made the decision to tell one lie after another as the crisis unfolded. The president made the morally indefensible decision to leave Americans behind. Dishonour was the president's choice. May history never forget this cowardice. Wow. I don't agree with everything he's saying there, but it's a lot better than what I'm about to go through. And by the way, on that perimeter around Karzai International Airport, when I first heard that criticism, I thought, oh, well, that's just ridiculous. If they expanded the perimeter around Karzai International Airport, it would just become a shooting war with the Taliban. And then you're back in Afghanistan again. That's just stupid. And you end up shooting the people in the crossfire that you're trying to save. Like, that'll be a great way to get Americans killed if you did that. But then there was a story which I just mentioned briefly on the last podcast, which I still can't get over. Honestly, I can't believe it hasn't gotten more coverage. I spoke to John about it, and he didn't seem as shocked by what I was. Have you heard the story? I think it was Washington Post, that the Taliban offered America to secure Kabul when they took Kabul, and America turned it down and said to the Taliban, no, you hold Kabul and we'll just hold the airport.
I did not hear this.
That to me is incredible. Like, every single thing we've been assuming until now, we go, well, when you're in the conditions where the Taliban are in control of everything, what are you going to do? But if that's true, and I emphasize if that's true, because it wouldn't be the first newspaper story that isn't true, but if that's true, then America put themselves in that position because they didn't want to spare the troops to secure Kabul, which I think is amazing. But anyway, let's leave that aside. Let's get into some of these criticisms I'm talking about. There are two kinds of unhelpful criticisms from conservatives that I can see. Number one is chest beating, which is like Todd Starnes, for instance. I'm not sure if you saw this tweet. For every American who is killed sitting in Afghanistan should be wiped off the face of the earth. Thanks, Todd. Admittedly, that tweet is now deleted, so even Todd Starnes has shame sometimes. Then the other kind is simplistic solutions that clearly wouldn't work. Like, for instance, Kevin McCarthy, I mentioned in the last podcast, had a bill that specifically stated that troops must stay in Afghanistan until all Americans are rescued, but only if it's safe. What a completely pointless bill that is. But anyway, Trump obviously is the king of the simplistic solution. Run through a couple of them here quickly. First, you bring out all the American citizens, then you bring out all equipment, then you bomb the bases in the smithereens, and then you bring out the military. He said he was going to do that by May the 1st, in 2 months. He hadn't even begun to process the Afghans at that point. So that's obviously not going to work. Another one, all equipment should be demanded to be immediately returned to the United States, and that includes every penny of the $85 billion in cost. If it's not handed back, we should either go in with the unequivocal military force and get it, or at least bomb the hell out of it. So he's suggesting he would have reinvaded Afghanistan to blow up all of America's guns. Apparently, by the way, I should just say, a little fact check, I'm not being snarky at Trump here, but just the $85 billion number gets thrown around a lot. In fact, it's been thrown around by me once or twice as well. $85 billion is the total cost of all special forces spending in Afghanistan from 2001 to now. Not equipment. It includes the army. That includes everything. It includes the police. That includes everything. The amount spent on equipment, we don't know, but Glenn Kessler from the Washington Post tried to crunch the number, and his estimate's $24 billion based on ratios and so forth. Sounds realistic.
Yeah, look, it is amazing how many times Trump's actually hinted at reinvading Afghanistan as the solution. And, you know, as this was happening, I did see how many Trump supporters, you know, forgot that they had supposedly stopped being Bush supporters. Like the reversion back to the sort of mid-2000s version of the Republican Party was very, very quick. But, yeah, seeing it from Trump himself as well, you're reminded of the fact that, oh, well, yes, because that's what he was too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, the mask has come off very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that another thing that he was talking about was how he would keep Bagram Air Base. Not just hold it till they withdraw, but keep it perpetually. Because, quote, it's right near China and Iran. Now, you can't physically be right near China and Iran because they're on the other sides of Afghanistan. But anyway, but you'd need to, that means that you're staying in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
That's what that means. I know.
There were a lot of people who were deluded into thinking that Trump was some sort of anti-war figure. If you listened carefully to Trump, what he was actually against was military failure. He wasn't against war. He didn't like the Iraq and Afghanistan wars because of the fact that they had obviously failed. There wasn't any kind of principled opposition to war there. Instead, what you got was delusional promises that, well, any war that I fight is going to be a successful one. Now, fortunately, that didn't actually happen during the Trump administration. But, yeah, I mean... I don't think that Americans are ever going to give credit to Biden for accepting defeat. But shit, someone had to accept defeat at some point.
I do feel like I've seen his argument used once or twice, and it does ring true to me that I mean, we use it as shorthand, saying things like defeat, but I do actually think that what just happened was not America losing the war in Afghanistan. They won the war in Afghanistan in about 2 months. What just happened was they just withdrew their occupation, in my view. Like I feel like they won the war and then they tried to install their own government to run Afghanistan, and they stayed there to try and keep it working, and it wasn't working, and then they gave up.
Another way of looking at it is they put themselves in a position to win the war, but then decided to keep it going instead because they thought they could get some even greater win instead of just a lousy surrender, which, anyone can negotiate that. They actually wanted to, as I said earlier, wipe out the Taliban. No, I think they did lose the war.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
The war, they lost it completely unnecessarily. They kept the war going.
I should say, by the way, when we're talking about whether Trump was ever going to actually withdraw or not, his acting Secretary of Defense at the end there, Chris Miller, he said that Trump was never going to leave Afghanistan. He said that, quote, our top national security officials never intend to pull all US troops out of Afghanistan. The public promise to finish withdrawing US forces by May 1st, as negotiated with the Taliban, was actually a play that masked the Trump administration's true intentions, which include keeping US forces in Afghanistan on a permanent basis to perform counter-terrorism missions, he said.
Yeah. Now, whether that's true or not, even if Trump had an intention of pulling them out, as soon as the military would have explained the risks to him, he wouldn't have. The temptations to just keep kicking
That's all right.
Once re-election was no longer a concern, throwing it to the next guy would have been an irresistible temptation.
And he'd already done it twice. He'd already been talked down twice. So, we just don't know. Obviously, we don't know. But I should also say about in this whole topic that we keep on hearing about the conditions that they had before, which Biden wasn't smart enough or whatever to follow. But there was really only one critical condition, which was don't attack Americans and don't let Al-Qaeda attack Americans. And they followed that all the way to the end. Unless the Taliban was responsible for the suicide bombing, which I don't believe they were, then they followed those conditions all the way to the end. They were the conditions. They were the main conditions Trump established, and they followed them. And they didn't actually ask anything else. They asked a few things, and Taliban didn't follow them. They asked them to negotiate with the government. Taliban didn't follow them. They asked the Taliban to. I think that's the main one, actually. There was also the bit where hang on, I'm trying to just get my... I didn't prepare this bit, as you can see, obviously. So that's right, the prisoners. That was the other... There's a condition they imposed on themselves, that they were going to release 5,000 Taliban prisoners. They didn't expect the Taliban to release anyone, but they themselves were going to release 5,000, and then they leaned on the Afghan government to release those 5,000 Taliban prisoners, who then ended up being part of the fighting force that overthrew the government. So they were strange conditions, let's put it that way. I don't think they were going to create peace on earth like it was suggested. Anyway, okay, let's leave that. The main thing, though, and this is an interesting area that's cropped up in the last couple of days. Trump is obviously all over the place with refugees. He was the hero of refugees 2 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden they're all terrorists. All right, like literally, there was the quote, we can only imagine how many thousands of terrorists have been airlifted out of Afghanistan and into neighbourhoods around the world. How many terrorists will Joe Biden bring to America? Now, obviously, this is the person who said he was going to send back the Syrian refugees after they had already established themselves in America. So he's never been a big fan of the refugees. But the interesting thing for me, though, was like even people like Matt Gaetz, who was quite pro the SIV refugees, the special immigration visas, the Afghan helpers. Even he was putting in little disclaimers like, we don't want 100,000 of them, but these people did help us out and we should help them, etc. There's an interesting development in the last few weeks, and I think that we're going to hear more about this. The special immigration visa guys are very, very popular, by the way. 81% approval of helping the Afghan translators entering America from the CBS poll. Even when you say settling them in your own state, 61% supported the Afghan refugees. So they're very popular. But if we look at how many have come over, there have been 20,000 have come over, and 6,000 Americans, and there are 120,000 evacuees. They're not all going to America, some are going to other countries. The Deputy Secretary of State specifically said that the only ones who would come were the people who went through the SIV program. But now, all of a sudden, they're taking in a whole bunch more of just rando Afghans, and they're saying they'll parole them for 2 years while they can apply for other visas. Now, obviously, we know where this is going. What are you going to do with someone if they don't get asylum, if they don't qualify for asylum in 2 years' time, and the Afghans, Taliban won't take them back? You got them, right? And you can see that the Republicans are going to latch onto this pretty soon. Like, they haven't quite latched onto it yet, but you can see it coming. And I'm kind of surprised that Joe Biden is sort of, because I've said a number of times, I don't think he's very pro-refugee. I suppose he's been browbeaten into this now. But I think that this is going to be, the people I'm most worried about actually are the special immigration visa guys who are still in Afghanistan, because they're the best part of probably 50 to maybe 100,000 of them still in Afghanistan. And you can just see America's going to turn off these guys real fast when they start demagoguing the people who aren't special immigration visas, who are in America now. So I don't know the process they're going through. They've been very unclear about it all. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried about where this is going. I don't think there's a lot of control, and I feel like they're leading with their chin a little bit. And the special immigration visa guys are going to be the ones paying the penalty. Do you have any thoughts about any of the refugee stuff? No? Okay.
No, other than we're going to just see extraordinary cynicism.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, are we ever? Yeah. Anyway, okay, let's that was 40 minutes. That wasn't too long on Afghanistan. Do you have anything else about Afghanistan before we move on? No? Okay. Stats Nugget! Stats Nugget! Woo! It's been so long since I've done a Stats Nugget. I'm so excited. I did a real happy dance then, and I've got a few good ones today, actually. First of all, okay, Pew Poll. People with at least some trust in national news organisations dropped from 76% in 2016 to 58% today. Not a surprise. Also not a surprise, Dems have gone from 83% to 78%. Also not a surprise, Republicans have gone from 70% in 2016 to 35% this year. I'm only surprised that they were at 70% back in 2016. No surprise there, but I'm setting something up here. Okay, trust in social media in the same poll has gone from 36% to 34% for Democrats, 32% to 19% for Republicans. I am personally surprised that given how much Democrats have gone on about pushing to address misinformation on social media, that they trust social media more than Republicans do. In fact, almost twice as much. But anyway, that's not where I'm going as well. I'm still saying up. Trust in local news organisations has gone from 85% to 84% for Democrats in the last 5 years, has gone from 79% to 66% for Republicans in the last 5 years. Local news organisations are the last information providing institution that Republicans trust. 66%.
Which is really depressing when you consider what's actually happened to local news organisations over the last 25 years.
This is exactly where I'm going, but just before you continue, let me throw in one more little data point, and then we'll continue on with that, because that is my conclusion.
Yes.
There was an experiment on whether local news fights polarization a little while ago, where they surveyed small towns, Palm Springs and Ventura. They got 2 local papers, a local paper each. The Palm Springs paper ran only local news for a month on its op-ed page, and the Ventura paper did not change its op-ed section. Polarization, I don't know how they measured that, but polarization apparently slowed down in Palm Springs compared to Ventura, particularly amongst those who read the newspaper, particularly amongst those who know a lot about politics and participate in politics regularly and read the newspaper. Those people, of course, are the most polarised people, and they saw some kind of difference there. And that was just after a month of changing 1 page of their local newspaper per day. And what's more, according to the paper's internal tracking, the online readership of the opinion content doubled during the local-only month for Palm Springs. So I don't know why they don't keep on doing it. But anyway, so let's go where you are. But local news is trusted. It helps polarisation. It obviously helps local democracy and participation. It's dying in the arse in such a massive, obvious way. It's just such a depressing development.
Yeah, look, when I was in Ann Arbor in the mid-2000s, the Ann Arbor News, a highly respected local newspaper which had been around for more than 100 years, a daily newspaper, closed. Now, other things spring up to replace it, but they tend to be rather niche, and it all tends to be online. That online component is important because when you've actually got a lot of people reading a physical newspaper, that's when you get advertising revenue that can actually support, a full-on newsroom. It's also, that when you have a physical copy of a newspaper, it's far more of a sort of self-contained experience. When you're reading news online, of course, you're in the, you're in the hall of mirrors that is the internet. God knows where you're going to end up. Now, obviously, we are in the internet age now, and there is no going back. And part of the tragedy of this is that cutting off local newspapers at the knees that has come because classified revenue is just no longer possible in the internet age, and it's very kind of hard to see what you could actually do about it. It's hard to sort of say, well, there's a decision that could have been made at some point that would have saved local newspaper. Part of it is just the way that technology is going. But what you now have is, it's not just that local news is a lot more trusted and could potentially have these really great, political effects. It's also that properly staffed local newsrooms keep city governments accountable, they keep state governments accountable, they keep police forces accountable, they keep education boards accountable. they let people know at a very fine-grained level what is actually happening in their local area when it comes to things like crime and amenities and sports. And you just can't get that when you don't have the journalistic boots on the ground. And, it used to be the case that local newspapers would have like more than one reporter assigned to different parts of local government. It used to be the case that state houses were crawling with journalists who were providing coverage of what was going on. Now, admittedly, this wasn't always the most exciting stuff, and it wasn't necessarily stuff that had a lot of interest to a lot of people, but it was absolutely vital that somebody was doing that to provide that accountability. It meant that there were things that people couldn't get away with. And not everywhere, but in a lot of places, it's just gone, or the coverage just isn't there to anywhere near the same degree.
Let's go on to talk a little bit about Biden's approval rating for a second, because the movement has been astonishing in the last 5 weeks or so, 6 weeks. He's gone from 53% at the end of July down to 46.2% was the last I saw in 538. Underwater by 1.7 points now. 46.2 approval, 47.9 disapproval.
Yeah.
There seem to be two separate events driving that decline, because his approval rating dropped basically 3 points from the end of July to the first week of August, and that was before Kabul fell. Yeah. And then it's dropped another 3 points since then. So yes. That's presumably Afghanistan's got fair to do with that, because there's no other news. So yeah. I imagine that's to do with that. And just in terms of numbers, before the withdrawal, he averaged 58% on Afghanistan. Now the average is about 30%. 53% of Americans approving his handling of the coronavirus at the moment, which was a 16-point drop from April. 46% approved his handling of the economy at the moment, which is a 6-point drop since April. Interestingly, your economy approval tends to very closely measure your general approval. There's a bit of correlation causation there, maybe, about like you're not sure which one informs the other one, but it is interesting that his approval is currently 46%. His average approval is 46%. At the end of July, it was 52% economy and 53% overall. So it does mirror each other. And that's not just a fluke. Like the University of Michigan consumer sentiment dropped 13% in the last month. But once again, chicken and egg there might be a chicken and egg situation there. I should also say that this is not unusual, obviously. Presidents dropping off their honeymoon. What is unusual is that he was so steady for so long and then just bang. But since his inauguration, he's dropped about 6 points. At the same time, Donald Trump dropped 10 points. Same time, Barack Obama dropped 17 points. Same time, Bill Clinton dropped 14 points. Obviously, Biden started historically low, though, except for Trump. The two of them being much lower than everyone else's to begin with. And the other thing which is interesting, polling-wise, 33% average of the country saying the country is going in the right direction. At the beginning of July, it was 43% agreed the country was going in the right direction. Now, those numbers are always very low. 43% was the highest it had been for 12 years.
Yes, yeah.
33% was Trump numbers. So we've gone from the highest it was for 12 years to Trump numbers in the space of a month. So do you have any theories about what's going on?
Oh, you'd hardly need to theorise this. The psychological pain that is being inflicted by the fact that people thought that, the light was there at the end of the tunnel for COVID. All of, restrictions were being shed all around the country. The numbers were plummeting. Deaths were plummeting. Vaccination was here. The fact that it's now going back up towards what it was in winter, and that children are getting it now, and that, there are more restrictions being put back on, more restrictions looming, that is devastating to people. It's almost surprising that that his numbers haven't actually dropped further, given that circumstance. So that's the first thing. Second, the US is looking at a humiliating military defeat, ending a war that has been going on for 20 years. You ask people questions about their views on the government and the president in that environment, they're not going to be good. But a third thing is that, obviously Trump had extremely stably low, approval ratings for most of his presidency. Well, we're back in the realm of having a Democratic president, right? Which is going to fluctuate more because Democrats will actually punish a Democratic president in policy terms. Democrats are a lot happier to tell pollsters that they're not happy with the Democratic president than Republicans are. I mean, they're still going to be far more supportive of him than the national average, but they're going to be a lot tougher. So I don't find it surprising at all that Biden's numbers are where they are in the midst of this terribly humiliating defeat, in the midst of an utterly demoralizing return to pandemic life, with the collapses in consumer confidence that come along with that, and with bleak economic prospects, and the fact that it wasn't as if Democrats were terribly enthusiastic about Joe Biden to begin with.
That's true. That's true.
He was not a kind of Obama figure in terms of the loyalty that he inspired. So
his strongly approved numbers have never been very high.
Yeah. So I don't think this is particularly surprising at all. By the way, I sort of vowed not to actually look at look at approval ratings ever again, or at least for until 2024. So this is all news to me, exactly where the numbers are, but it's not surprising to me at all that this is where the numbers are.
Fair enough. Well, the reason I brought it up, because I do agree with everything you just said, and we obviously could have just summed it up with just COVID, and it's true. It is clearly what you say is spot on. But the reason I brought this up was because what isn't being talked about so much is the next 6 weeks and what those approval ratings, how they feed into the next 6 weeks. Because I think Biden has a very tough month coming up. Let me tell you why. First of all, the next unemployment figures are the first unemployment figures since Delta hit. Because remember, they take the unemployment figures from halfway through the month. So the last unemployment figures were measured in the middle of July, and it was after that Delta went crazy. So the next unemployment figures could be ugly. We don't know. Maybe they won't be, but they could be. Secondly, the extended unemployment benefits, which we've been arguing about forever, cuts off on September 8 for everyone. And that is 8 million extra people losing $300 extended unemployment benefits.
Yes.
At exactly the same time as the eviction moratorium has ended. So there are going to be people who have this huge back payment of rent, haven't received any assistance from the government because their rent assistance was pathetic. The system still isn't working. It's like they've distributed like $5 billion out of 46. And people will get evicted. It's a hard cutoff, that extended unemployment benefits, by the way. It didn't have to be that way, but generally speaking, it's a bit of a political game that the left tend to play with these kinds of welfare things, where they try and create situations where there is a hard cutoff, so then there's some pain to try and encourage people to extend it. In this case, their bluff has been called, and it's going to cut off all at once for everyone. Bang. At least for people who aren't in the 26 states that went before. As a little aside, there's research on those 26 states. Well, I know we've been talking about this forever, about the incentive effect with extended unemployment benefits, and there's certainly a good research for the purposes of the left here, which is that 19 of the 26 states, this group in the New York Times analysed, who cut off the benefits early, they found for every 8 workers who lost benefits, 1 found a new job. So for $278 a week in benefits lost, they gained $14 a week in earnings. Their spending fell $145 a week, which is a $2 billion drop in spending across those 19 states, which they probably don't need right about now. So you have a potential economic crunch coming right there in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Then you've got Afghanistan. Are they going to be hostages? Are they going to be like, what's going to happen with the Americans who are still there? Because they're not going to let that go. The press are not going to let the Americans go, I don't think. When do the hearings start? Because there are Democrats who are very hawkish, who, like you said, Dave, are not like Republicans. They're not going to be supporting Biden there. There's going to be some real hearings. And I think there's going to be potentially some real dirt to have hearings about. And they're going to be coming soon as well. How about leaks? There is so much leaking going on right now from the Biden administration, which we haven't seen until now. There was leaks just in the last week about the COVID booster shot approval, like when the two people resigned because they said the COVID. We'll get to this actually about the COVID shots being the booster shots decision being politicised in the FDA. There were leaks about that. There were leaks about the kill list, the inverted commas kill list. There were leaks about leaving Americans behind. Heaps of leaks at the moment, and that's the kind of thing where there's a spiral. Once it starts, it keeps on going. COVID. We've already got record COVID. Children's hospitalisations at the moment. They're going back to school now, and they've already got record children's hospitalisations at the start of school. So that's going to be a big issue as well. Meanwhile, you've got these congressional negotiations where you've got the moderates versus the left on the reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill, where they've got a standoff where potentially either side can sabotage the other one. Now, that's fine when you have a popular president, but if you're cruising around in the low 40s, all of a sudden Biden has a little less pull you can start getting a little bit, each one for their own, especially from the moderates, because the moderates tend to run as independents a lot in their election campaigns. So there's going to be some intense lobbying going on as well, because of the Medicare stuff in that reconciliation bill is going to hurt a lot of rich companies. Let me tell you what I'm talking about, just briefly, because this does not get talked about. Allowing Medicare to negotiate prices for prescription drugs is going to cost a lot of money from a lot of pharmaceuticals. Especially, though, lowering the Medicare eligibility age, oh my God, that's going to cost a lot of pharmaceutical health insurance companies some profits. And expanding Medicare benefits to include dental, vision and hearing coverage. A lot of people don't realise the way Medicare works in America is you have the dodgy... Oh, not dodgy, but you have your low-grade Medicare, which people get either for free or super subsidised, depending on the situation. Then you have Medicare Advantage, which people pay for a little bit, and the government subsidises a lot, which is private health insurance added on to your Medicare, okay? Medicare Advantage is an absolute slush bucket for the health insurance companies. The advantage, the reason people sign on to that Medicare Advantage is because it has dental, vision and hearing coverage. If you include dental, hearing and vision coverage into Medicare, all these old people will drop their Medicare Advantage plans immediately, and there goes hundreds of billions of dollars of profits for the health insurance industry. So there's going to be some serious lobbying, especially of those moderates. And just remember, if they don't get that bill up, that infrastructure bill, or that gets watered down to be essentially nothing, that's going to demoralise the left so hard going into 2022. There's going to be circular firing squads. It's just a very dangerous time, I think, for Joe Biden to have a particularly low approval rating. And so I just think that this next month he needs to be extremely careful. I mean, he might be fine, but I think this is a real danger period myself. What are your thoughts?
Chaz, what you've just done is this great impersonation or personification of the media environment at the moment. Yep. Breakneck, frenetic, drama after drama after drama after drama, drama piled on drama to the extent that no one actually pays attention to any of it. Right?
Fair.
This kind of media environment has created a public which has the attention span of a goldfish swimming in bong water. Joe Biden, in January of 2020, had just come fourth in the first two primaries, and he ended up becoming the president of the United States. he is 78 years old and he is the president. I don't think that he is that concerned about about the fact that his approval rating could drop by another 3 points over the next 6 weeks, 15 months away from the next midterm election and more than 3 years away from the next presidential election. I think that, everything you've described, yes, it all has real world consequences. But in terms of this is going to be a difficult time for Biden's approval rating over the next 6 weeks, I really don't think that it matters that much. I doubt that Biden would believe that it matters that much. And yes, it does. It makes things very politically difficult in terms of Congress.
Yeah,
but
that's my point.
Are we looking at a golden age of, of success in Congress at the moment? Clearly Biden not having a cooperative Congress, this is not exactly a new problem. Biden managing a fractious party, this is not a new problem at all. I don't actually see things getting qualitatively worse now than they actually have been for the first, 8 months of the year. And I don't see Biden caring that much. Okay,
this is actually one of those times we actually disagree, because I reckon he hasn't had a fractious party for his presidency. I think the left, in particular, have been very good to him for the last 6 months. They've swallowed a lot of shit, and they haven't really. I mean, you get the odd comment from AOC or Rashid Tlaib or something, but really, Bernie Sanders has been extremely well behaved. He's been on side as hard as you could possibly be for the last 6 months. And I don't think we've had anything approaching a circular firing squad yet. But I think if that infrastructure bill goes down, we will, and there'll be recriminations for 12 months going into the midterms. And there is going to be nothing else passed. This is the last chance saloon for things to get passed in Congress, essentially. And I think if we have 12 months of them pissing on each other about how you ruin that, and I just feel like, already the midterms are stacked against the incumbent party all the time.
Yes.
It would take a miracle for the Democrats to retain the House and the Senate in the midterms. Yeah. But it could easily be 2010 again, I think, if we have recriminations for the next.
I don't think that Biden's personal approval rating is going to make any difference to that.
Well, like I said, I don't think. Just be clear, I don't think Biden's seen back going, oh no, I've only got a 38% approval rating. Oh no, give me a tie. I don't think it's like that. I do think that the approval rating has a direct impact on Congress, and I think the key issue is, do they get the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill passed? If they do, then I think Biden has a very different rest of his presidency than if they don't. That's all I'm saying. And I think the approval rating affects that. We will see. But I take the criticism on board about the drama. I did feel dramatic when I was saying it. but just to be clear, I'm talking about what happens in Congress as being the key here, not the approval rating in itself. But let's move on, because I've spent too much time talking about this. Let's move on to the Supreme Court, Dave.
Yes. Yeah. So the Supreme Court has declined to hear a challenge to Texas's abortion law.
Yeah.
So this is often referred to as the shadow docket, which I'm sure that you can talk about that because it's got a lot of great legal detail.
Oh, yeah.
But the upshot of it is that they were basically able to give an opinion, a 5-4 opinion, without actually explaining it in any kind of detail whatsoever. So this is one of the worst laws that has been passed in a long time, I would say, in any state. So this is a law that makes it illegal to have an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy.
Sorry, can I just explain something to the guys? Because I'm sure the girls will understand this. But to the guys, when we say 6 weeks pregnant, what that means is 6 weeks from their last period. Okay, so potentially, if they missed the period, they might only be a week and a half late. And unless they're sitting there with whether like counting by the day because they're worried about getting pregnant or something like that, then they may well not even know this. But yeah, go on.
So it's 85% of people who get abortions. It's after that. It's after that 6-week period. So it strips away the standard that was established by the Casey versus Pennsylvania case in 1992, which is, and we've talked about this a lot before, which is fetal viability as the standard. Without the standard of fetal viability, there basically is no standard. If you're going to make it 6 weeks, you may as well ban it altogether. Okay, so this is blatantly unconstitutional then. And the way that they have got around this is usually if a law is blatantly constitutional, then the way that you stop it at the Supreme Court is by suing the state officials who would have responsibility for enforcing it, and then the court can block those state officials from enforcing it. So what they've done is to take it out of the hands of state officials. State officials aren't going to be involved. Instead, they essentially deputise private citizens to go after anybody who is involved in an abortion. Not the patient themselves. The patient themselves can't be sued, but anybody else who's involved, anyone who raises money to help pay for it, anybody who performs an abortion or is part of the staff of a clinic that performs an abortion.
The Uber driver who takes you to the abortion.
Uber driver or taxi driver, yes. So this is basically saying we're now licensing anybody to be a bounty hunter, because if you sue and you win, then you get a $10,000 cash prize, courtesy of the government of Texas, and you get your legal costs paid. And
critically, there's no limit to the number of people who can sue.
Yeah.
So every right-wing activist can sue if they want. You can be hit with 10,000 lawsuits.
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, the obvious effect of this is that places are just not going to do it. Even places that are compliant with the law, are just not going to do it. There's no exception for rape or incest. Nothing. So basically, this is making legal abortion impossible in Texas. One of the things, so I mean, it's just incredibly insidious the way that they've done this to get around, the fact that this is unconstitutional. You basically make it impossible for the court to do anything. And it's also just disgraceful that the court has acquiesced to this. And it shows you where the court actually is on this issue. But another thing that's worth mentioning is the vindictiveness of this and the way that it fits with the structure of right-wing activism in the United States. People from outside the US, it's hard to understand exactly the importance of the leisure class of right-wing activists in America. So if you've ever seen outside an abortion clinic in the US or inside a vote counting centre in 2020, you'll see what I'm talking about. Comfortably well off, generally middle-aged people with nothing but time, supported by people with nothing but money to just go out and wreak mayhem on their enemies. This is what we are talking about with this law. You're basically, you're empowering this leisure class of activists to go out and spend their time targeting people who are, providing abortions or assisting with abortions in some way. It probably won't be very long before we see slickly produced YouTube videos by people showing themselves doing undercover stings on abortion providers. I can already picture what this is going to look like. It's not going to look pretty. So this is a truly terrible development. It is, this is the sort of thing that was warned about, even though this has happened very suddenly. It was clear that something like this was going to happen. And yeah, this is an absolutely terrible event.
Tag, Dave. I've got a bit more to say about this one. First of all, we should add that there are no rape or incest exemptions.
Yeah.
That's something which should be emphasised. I think you've summarised quite well the situation. Basically, anyone who, quote, aids or abets the performance or inducement of an abortion is in the gun. Something which I don't think a lot of people understand is the way the legal fees work, which is the dodgiest bit of all. Like if you want to see that, if you want just to prove that it's bad faith, which is if someone sues an abortion clinic and they win, the abortion clinic pays their legal fees. If they sue the abortion clinic and they lose, they don't pay the abortion clinic's legal fees.
No.
The abortion clinic is paying its legal fees when it's sued, regardless of the outcome. So if they're sued by huge numbers of people, well, they're paying the legal fees regardless of whether the lawsuits are frivolous or not. So that's an easy way to send an abortion clinic bankrupt.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's true that people who bring these suits, if they lose, then they will have to pay the costs of whatever they took. But I'm sure that there are going to be very well-funded networks already being set up to make sure that none of the activist leisure class is ever left out of pocket by this.
Absolutely. Furthermore, as soon as an abortion clinic is found guilty, they are automatically shut down under this law, which means if you're an abortion clinic and someone comes to you and they say, I'm pregnant, I'd like an abortion, and you can't take the risk that they might be more than 6 weeks pregnant. How do they know for a fact that that person who says they're 4 weeks pregnant isn't 6 weeks pregnant? It's impossible to tell. And so they're taking a huge risk by giving anyone abortions, even if it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks pregnant. They're still taking a risk that they might end up getting shut down, which is exactly why a lot of abortion clinics right now in Texas are just saying, well, if you come here, we're just going to tell you where to go out of town, or out of state, because we can't do it anymore. So, I mean, it's an ingenious, it's a kind of an evilly ingenious way of actually shutting down abortion without shutting down abortion. Like, because on the books, they're still available, at least up to 6 weeks, but in reality, they're not going to be available at all. Another thing is I just want to go through just the legal technicalities a little bit here, which was Dave described how the problem with this is that you don't know who you're going to sue, right? To challenge a law, you need to sue the person who is going to enforce it beforehand, and then you can challenge it, you can get an injunction before they enforce it. You don't know who's going to enforce this, it could be any random person, and that's the reason why you can't have a normal lawsuit, all right? So what they tried to do is they tried to sue Texas Attorney General, because he's the one who's going to shut down the abortion clinics if they violate this law. So that's not enforcing it. It's not the person who's suing, but still, it's some kind of, it's close to enforcement. The second thing is they're suing a Texas judge and a clerk, because they say, well, if someone is going to sue me, it's going to be through the judge. And so they're kind of part of the enforcement process. And the district judge said, that's fine. We'll go for it. We'll hear that lawsuit. Then the Fifth Circuit, which is the most conservative circuit of appeals, came over the top and said, no, we're going to freeze that case, and we'll just leave it for now. That's it. And then, so the question was, it went to the Supreme Court, whether the Supreme Court could overturn the judgment of the Fifth Circuit to allow the district court to hear the case. This was not a case for the Supreme Court. It said none of the Supreme Court, other than the Supreme Court, allowing the case to proceed in the district court where they wanted to hear the case. And the Supreme Court said nothing. They didn't say no, they said nothing. They just said, we're making no comment, which is, we're not overturning it, we're just leaving it. That's what they refer to as the shadow docket, where you don't actually make a decision, you just do nothing. And the decision
and it generally
gets made
happens
for you.
very quickly.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. So that's the process by which it went. And so this is, and by the way, Roberts was with the Libs.
We're going to see that increasingly, I think.
Yeah, this was the nightmare scenario the Democrats feared when Amy Coney Barrett was taken over. They would start being 5-4, where Roberts was one of the Libs, and this is what happened just now. And so it's funny because it was interesting because you've got this case, Dobbs, which is going to be heard by the Supreme Court next year, for a 15-week abortion ban, which now becomes kind of irrelevant because what's going to happen now, as long as the Supreme Court stays out of this and they keep that hold there, is you just get every other state passing exactly the same law, every other red state passing exactly, and so effectively abortion will immediately be banned for every single red state. And even though on the books Roe versus Wade still holds, which is bizarre. Now, of course, I hate this because this kind of undermines the rule of law, really. That's a way of getting around someone's constitutional rights. And I suspect this is going to get resolved eventually because it's just so obvious that a Democrat in New York is going to start passing laws where they go, if you sell an assault rifle, then everyone can sue you. They'll just start doing the same thing with guns or something like that, which they know is going to get the attention of the Conservatives. Then we'll see how much of a hypocrite the Supreme Court is, if the Supreme Court slaps that one down but leaves the abortion one up. Whatever it is, I think is not maintainable. But in the meantime, it's going to destroy abortion clinics across Texas. Sorry?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't think the Supreme Court is that concerned about the appearance of hypocrisy.
Yeah, right. Anyway, that's enough about that. I really don't like that ruling. No. Okay. We got just under 10 minutes left. Let's get into COVID. I'm going to skip a bit here. First of all, you're left over, so is there anything you want to talk about with COVID to begin with?
No.
Okay, all right. I'll start and then you can follow. At the moment, let's start talking about vaccines. I'm going to skip all the stuff about masks and so forth. I'll hold that for next week. With vaccines, a couple of things. It's a few interesting studies. In Belgium, they did a study where they found Moderna generates over twice the antibodies that Pfizer does. 2,881 units per milliliter versus 1,108 units per milliliter. Shame though, because at exactly the same time as that came out, we found out that Japan has suspended Moderna for contamination of tiny metal flakes. And 2 people died with no pre-existing illnesses just after they took Moderna. Now, they were part of 3 batches made from Moderna in Spain that were taken by 180,000 people. They do think that they might be unrelated because the metal flakes were so small, they were too small for a blockage, and the symptoms weren't right for a poisoning. But nevertheless, we might have a J&J scenario where there's so much mud that it doesn't come back. Well, we'll see. I mean, Moderna's not such an issue for Australia at the moment, although I think they're trying to buy some. But another interesting thing with vaccines, the FDA approval, we've talked about some of the polls that suggested it could be significant for vaccine-hesitant people. Well, listen to this. Okay. Those who say in the Axios-Ipsos coronavirus index, those who say the parents who say they will get the vaccine for their children as soon as available has jumped a stack in the last week. Not very or not at all likely was 44 to 48% for the last 4 months. And then this week, it went from 44% to 31% who said not very likely or not at all am I going to get for my kids. So 13% more dropped out of the vaccine hesitancy section for their children as well. And people tend to be quite concerned about their children, obviously. So that may have an effect. We will see with the actual raw numbers. But that's interesting. Also, latest Kaiser Foundation demographics I found interesting from those who had a vaccine. 67% in total have received 1 dose so far. 86% Democrats, 54% Republicans. Not a big surprise. 70% whites, 65% blacks. That's not a surprise. Noteworthy for what's his name, Dan Patrick in Texas. 65% blacks is a lot more than 54% Republicans. He said that blacks were the biggest group of unvaccinated people. 60% white evangelicals, which I need to talk to you about sometime, Dave, because I saw a poll from the Journal of Psychology and Theology that 69% of white evangelical Republicans who said they refused to get vaccinated agreed that the end times were near, which I thought was an interesting little thing to ask. But anyway, another time for that. Do you want to jump in?
I would need to actually have a look at that.
That's fine. I'll send it to you. We can talk about it another time. But the reason I'm going is the interesting thing here: 58%, 30 to 49s, 57%, 18 to 29s. None of that's surprising. The lowest group by a mile, 44% of the uninsured have gotten one shot of vaccine. 44%. The lowest shot by an absolute mile. And I think that is worth paying attention to.
Yes, it absolutely is.
And I mean, there might be an ideological component, but I don't think there is. I think that speaks to me of a sociological component or economic component.
Absolutely, yes.
And that's a lot of people as well. So I just want to flag that there. Another thing I want to flag is that there's a lot of talk about partisanship with Republicans, and it's interesting because even Republicans are -5 favourability towards the unvaccinated, 27-32. But there's something that I've been thinking about, and that is that with the MAGAs, who are obviously the people behind a lot of the hesitancy at the moment, like the Trump supporters, I'm not sure this is electoral partisanship. And I'll tell you why I'm not sure it is electoral partisanship. It's because they're doing exactly the same thing they were doing when Trump was president. They're wavering from acting like the whole thing is a hoax to swarming across home remedies. They just go back and forth from hoax to home remedy to hoax to home remedy. They're rejecting any orthodox method of protection, whether it's masking or vaccines. This was like under Trump and under Biden. And here's the proof that it isn't electoral considerations. This is Trump to his Alabama rally the other day.
And then we developed a vaccine, 3 vaccines in 3 months, in 9 months. And actually, I'll tell you, it was 3 days less than 9 months. And it's great. And you know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. You got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms. But I happen to take the vaccine. If it doesn't work, you'll be the first to know, okay? I'll call up Alabama and say, hey, you know what? But it is working. But you do have your freedoms. You have to maintain that. You have to maintain that. And you got to get your kids back to school.
That was pure tribalism, where Trump backed down in the face of them. There's no electoral partisanship there. It's just pure tribalism. And so Fox obviously hasn't helped. There was an interesting stat here. From June 28 to August 8, Fox's opinion programming aired 349 vaccine segments. Of those, 74% include claims undermining or downplaying immunisation efforts. And for Fox's news shows, they had 279 vaccine segments, and 39% of those news shows undermined vaccines. So I think that's part of the tribalism as well. And actually, at this point in time, I want to introduce our special guest podcaster today, Kirsten Drysdale, with our special guest interviewer, Chaz Licciardello, to talk about the thing which I think most distinguishes these people, which is the home remedies. And Kirsten has some interesting things to say. Chaz, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Chaz. I am here in the interview dungeon and I'm speaking to Kirsten Drysdale. Kirsten, tell us what you do.
Hi. Well, at the moment, I'm writing for the ABC's new show, Question Everything. It's a comedy panel show about misinformation.
Aha. So you have been studying, presumably, misinformation and COVID, and in particular, I want to talk to you about ivermectin because you've been chained to me on GChat about ivermectin for the last week and a half. It's extremely boring. I'm sure you'll be interesting now.
No, it's fascinating, Chaz. I don't understand why they didn't dedicate the whole episode to this.
I suppose it's supposed to be a comedy show, and this would make people cry. the true story.
Yeah, pretty much. So we had a segment last week about vaccine hesitancy and what's driving that, and a sort of component of that is this big push for ivermectin as a treatment for COVID, which is, something the anti-vaxxers like to push. They say you don't need the vaccine, you just need this amazing wonder drug, ivermectin, and it'll make you better.
Okay. Now, I imagine a few people who are watching this podcast would be familiar with the viral tweet going around from the FDA that's just going around everywhere, which says, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow, seriously, y'all, stop it." People are just suckers for bureaucrats talking in colloquialisms. So we know that things have gone a bit awry. Why don't you just take us from the beginning? How did this all start?
Yeah. Okay. So we're all familiar with the people overdosing on horse paste thing, but there is an actual interesting kernel of truth to the ivermectin story, which is, why people got interested in this drug in the first place. So just to give you a bit of a backstory, this is a drug that's been around since the 70s. It's an anti-parasite drug. It's a dewormer. It attacks invertebrates. So that's why humans, horses, dogs can take this drug. It kills the worms inside them. It doesn't hurt them. I mean, it does if you take too much of it. There are bad side effects, as people are now discovering. So that's what it's kind of traditionally and mainly used for. But over the years, researchers have found that it has shown some ability in vitro to kill certain types of single-strand RNA viruses. So things like yellow fever, there's a strain of horse herpes that it's quite effective on in a petri dish, right?
Has it ever worked to treat any kind of virus in animals or people?
Not a virus, I don't think. It hasn't shown, it's good on worms, not so good on viruses in bodies.
Yeah, sure. Sorry to interrupt you there, Kirsten, but because you are using the Australian internet, you keep on freezing. So we're just going to white flash you every single time, and we'll keep on going. We'll piece you together word by word. We'll get there in the end. As you were saying.
Okay, so because COVID is a similar virus, it's also a single-stranded RNA virus, they thought, this is interesting. I wonder whether ivermectin could work on COVID. And some researchers showed last year, Australian researchers actually, that yes, it did seem to kill COVID again in a petri dish. Now, the thing about these petri dish trials is not only are they not in humans, they're also in concentrations that are nowhere near what the human body can tolerate. So they were like, look, yes, this kind of is promising that it does seem to have an effect on COVID in a lab, but we really don't know if it's going to work in people or if there is a way to make this work in people. We need to investigate. Like maybe there's a way that we can administer this drug in a much stronger way that the body can take and it will work, but we just don't know yet.
Do we have a sense of just how much stronger it would need to be to work?
It's like order of thousands, I think. So we're talking, I'm not very good at knowing the difference between nanomoles and micrograms, but it's, it's like a bit, at least 1,000. Yeah.
Sure. It's in the micro nano kind of cosmos. Gotcha.
It's in that cosmos, and there's quite a big difference between those two units of measurement, put it that way.
Sure.
So they were like, look, we need to investigate further. So then, since then, there've been a whole bunch of trials done on ivermectin in people who have COVID. Most of them are pretty small scale pilot studies, pretty inconclusive. And, there was a big Cochrane review done in May 2020, May of this year, which is, sort of held up as the gold standard of meta-analyses of where evidence is at. That Cochrane review was like, don't know, really nothing suggesting that this is actually working.
Was this the one that was a review of 14 different studies? Because I read somewhere there was a review of 14 different studies that with 1,600 participants in total, and they concluded there was just no evidence that proved anything.
I think it could have been that one. So their conclusion was overall, the reliable evidence available does not support the use of ivermectin for treatment or prevention of COVID-19. Gotcha. So they were just like, there's nothing here. Yeah. However, one of the studies that has happened was one that came out late last year, and this was a big study. It was it involved 600 people. It was apparently a randomized controlled trial, which is, a pretty good standard of study design. It's and it had very promising results. Okay, so it got a lot of attention, it got a lot of excitement. It came from a bunch of researchers at some Egyptian universities. The lead author was a guy called Dr. Ahmed Al-Ghazar. It claimed that treating people with COVID with ivermectin reduced mortality by 90%. So,
right, so I'm going to get the horse paste now, yeah?
Go for it, Chaz, but just eat it slowly because you might want to wait to hear what a little bit more about this amazing study. Okay.
You tell me
So
more.
now this study, I just want to explain. This was a preprint. So this is a very common thing we've seen throughout COVID. Preprint studies, you know, you're getting held up before anyone's even they haven't been published in a journal. It was just published on this like website. It had not been peer reviewed. Yeah. However, it's been cited dozens of times. Doctors are using the results of this study to justify treating hundreds of thousands, if not millions of patients by the account of one expert. This study has been included in a whole bunch of meta-analyses, and because it's such a big study, it's got a lot of weight in those reviews. So it skews the results to make it look like ivermectin has a lot of promise.
I can also say for a fact, it's been cited many millions of times in Facebook comments. I can assure you of that. It's been cited to me a number of times as well.
There you go. It's doing the rounds. This study is complete bullshit. How do we know?
Please tell me.
Okay. Well, there had been a number of people trying to like raise questions about this study from the beginning, but they sort of weren't being heard. And then earlier this year, a medical student in the UK, a guy by the name of Jack Lawrence, he was assigned this study for a university assignment. He was meant to look into it and just write about it for his class. So when he first opens up the study to read it, he noticed that something was up with the text. He was like, this text is just off. There's something not right about it. It's written really poorly, but then sometimes there's a really perfect sentence right in the middle. It just seems weird. And so we sort of did some reverse searching and realized that these huge chunks of text were just copied and pasted from press releases and websites about ivermectin. And the authors had then sort of tried to cover up that plagiarism a little bit by running it through a thesaurus sometimes. So what that meant was they ended up sometimes with words changed. For example, so SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, as in part of the disease that COVID gives you, became extreme intense respiratory syndrome, which sounds a bit like a Red Bull extreme sport or something. So, you know, like noticing that this text was clearly super dodgy, he said, look, I called him. I was like, I wanted to hear this story straight from him. And he was like, look, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a data analyst. But given the text was so dodgy, I thought the numbers were probably dodgy too. So I wanted to look into them. And he had a bit of a hard time trying to get his hands on the raw data. So he had to like request it from the authors, and then they would only give it to him by this weird file sharing site that he had to sign up and pay for a premium account to download their Excel spreadsheet full of data. So then he finally gets that and he discovers it's password protected. And he's like, oh shit, what am I going to do? So he guesses a few passwords, and then on the third go, he gets it. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. So he's now.
That was his third guess?
That was his third guess. I forget what he said. I think his first one was like COVID-19, and then something, the author's name, and then it was 1, 2, 3, 4. So now he's got this like raw data set, and he sends it to some data analysts to say, hey, what do you guys think? So they have a look at it, and their take is, quote, just totally faked and, quote, mathematically impossible. So there were all these statistical errors, which I won't claim to understand, but the guys who do say are just total nonsense. But in addition to the statistical errors, there were just clearly like patient records that had been duplicated. There were, one guy said, the main error is that at least 79 of the patient records are obvious clones of other records. It's certainly hard to explain away as innocent error, given the clones aren't even pure copies. There are signs they've tried to change 1 or 2 fields to make them look more natural.
Right.
So in one example, there were there's 4 patients who all share the same initials. They're all males aged 51. They all suffered from diarrhea, had the same blood hemoglobin levels, were all diagnosed on the 22nd of May, all died on the 29th of May, and shared identical values in at least 4 other data columns. That's quite a coincidence.
Right, certainly is. What, do we have any sense of why this guy did this? Why did he make up all this shit?
No idea. So I asked the med student that. I was like, what is this guy's motivation? And he didn't know either. And he just said, look, I don't know. Like, I don't think he's being paid by ivermectin to, try and make it sound amazing. He said it's probably just the same thing that drives all scientific fraud, which is trying to get a name for yourself so that you can get better grant,
Sure.
apply for funding.
You can face jeopardy. Sure.
Yeah. Like there were patients who had died before the study began. There was one who had checked out on the 31st of June, which is a date that doesn't exist. Like, this just went on and on. It was just an absolute mess. So as soon as this was pointed out, the study got withdrawn. The authors have kind of refused to answer any questions about any of this. They've just sort of gone to ground. And so that's where we're at. But this lives on as something that is held up as proof that ivermectin has promise.
Did you follow how we went from that one study to the trail of shit that has commenced since then?
Not what, as in why it's just taken off around the world.
Yeah. Like what was the intermediary step? Like we got this one study, which was extremely dodgy. Was it just that one study got around so much that was enough?
There were other studies getting around. There are other people championing it for all kinds of weird reasons. I don't know why. I mean, you've got like the people like Joe Rogan, who he's taking it right now.
Yeah.
Since he got COVID. It's this one is just one of the because it was such a big study and supposedly such a well-designed study, it kind of just really got latched onto.
Yeah. Okay, because the next thing I know about is the American frontline doctors.
Oh, yeah.
Who are the people who were all about hydroxychloroquine last year, and then they became all about ivermectin. So I presume that's as a result of this study you just described.
It'll be partly this study. Yeah. Yeah. So you've got people like that boosting it as well. Look, there are doctors in Sydney right now who are prescribing ivermectin to patients with COVID.
Which
off-label.
And like just to be clear, that's okay, isn't it? That's safe. It's just not going to cure their COVID.
Yes. And they're prescribing them the human tablet form of ivermectin, and that's perfectly legal. It's safe.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's not. There's no evidence that that's going to help their COVID. And like I have my parents are from Africa, and they've got friends in South Africa where there's very little access to vaccines or any other form, and COVID's pretty rampant there. So people are taking it out of desperation. I guess they're just like, well, it might work and it can't hurt, so we'll get our hands on it. And they're all, of course, swearing by it, but that's all just anecdotal. It's never been able to be replicated in any kind of well-designed trial to date.
Okay. Oh, my understanding is that when correct me if I'm wrong here, but from my reading, it seems that the American frontline doctors, these charlatans, I don't know what they're playing at either, but they got involved, and they were sort of tied in with this group called Speak with an MD, which was this online service, which was a place where people could go to get prescribed ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine as well. And they were doing such big business out. I don't know if they were making money out of this or not, but this is a cheap pill, isn't it? Ivermectin, the normal human version?
Normally it is, but because it's in such short supply, I think the prices have gone up quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay, so people are making money out of it now. So that's part of it then, presumably. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, but my understanding is that this Speak with MD service started to run out as well, and then people started getting impatient, and just generally it was getting prescribed. I think the numbers I saw was it went from something in the order of about 3,000 prescriptions in 2020 to 90,000 prescriptions now in early August, in 1 week in August, and so they just ran out, and so that's when people started to do the vet option, yeah?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So talk me through the vet option.
Sorry, right. So that's what you meant by tracing how we got to here.
Yeah.
So basically, all the human pills ran out, and people were like, well, fuck it, I'll take the dog stuff or the horse stuff. My sister actually runs an ag supplies business. She sells this stuff all the time. And did I freeze again?
No. She's a dealer.
Yeah.
Your sister is a dealer.
Yeah, she's a dealer. So people are coming in and like getting ivermectin. This is, by the way, up in like Mackay where there is zero COVID. So I don't know why anyone is bothering, but maybe they just want to have it in the bunker just in case. I mean, look, people are just resorting to the animal versions.
Yeah. But are there no animal versions that are closer to the size of a human than a horse or a cow?
Not that I know of. I mean, well, maybe it's just that those are the most readily available, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, what's a human-sized mammal?
Well, I thought you'd be better off going with double the dose for a German Shepherd, say, than for a horse.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to give anyone any suggestions. Christ, no.
Or just take a smaller amount of the horse one, or get one that's like for a Shetland pony or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
But it's not good. Don't do it. It will make you sick.
Yeah. Well, talk me through that. What does it do? What does the horse paste version do? I mean, certainly I've seen the tweets going around where people are shitting themselves, like directly. They're buying the product, having it in the store, and shitting themselves immediately.
Apparently, that's fake news.
Oh.
I know.
I work on misinformation show.
Yeah, I was so disappointed, but I think that's been debunked. But it is giving people, what's the word? Digestive issues, shall we say?
So is it also fake news that people's intestines are literally being shredded and they're shitting out the walls of their intestines?
No, I think that's just a colourful way of describing the effect that I think it's not good for the intestines. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. All right. Again, and the other thing which I know which I've read everywhere is that 70% of the recent calls to the Mississippi Poison Control Center are people consuming ivermectin in animal or livestock form. Of course, it's Mississippi. The other thing is I saw also seen plenty. I don't know if this is true or not. Once again, who knows? The internet's full of bullshit. But I've seen stickers. I've seen photos of supposedly in animal supply stores. I'll put one up right there where they literally say to buy this product you need to show a picture of you and your horse.
Yeah.
Which is high time for horse enthusiasts, I would have thought. So their time has finally arrived. Okay. So do you have anything
you normally don't have to ask a horse person to show you a picture of them and their horse. Like normally they'll just show you. They love their horses so much.
That is the ultimate test. That is absolutely true.
And in fact, it's probably just like their lock screen image. Like they'll just be able to just do that.
Yeah. Now we have met the same horse people, I feel. Do you have anything else to add about the circus at the moment of ivermectin, like with the silly stuff? You probably already put on your show.
Oh no, it's all on the show. Don't take it.
Okay.
Don't take it.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to run through a couple of the arguments I saw online, possibly from some of our commenters, about arguing for the benefits of ivermectin, and just to throw them at you and just see what your thoughts are. Number one, ivermectin has been suppressed by the mainstream because it threatens pharmaceutical profits.
Wouldn't it? What do you mean? Wouldn't it make profits?
No, I think it's the vaccine guys. You know, Pfizer and Moderna and presumably Fauci are all together in the same dark room with leather chairs, just going, whoa, and they're suppressing the research that proves that ivermectin works because they're trying to make money out of the vaccines. I think that's the argument.
Right. Okay. Well, look, I don't know for sure that didn't happen, but I know for sure that even the big pharma company that makes ivermectin does not want you to take it for COVID. Like even they are like, this does not work for COVID.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Merck, which is the company that makes ivermectin, I'm pretty sure that Merck is not trying to make profits for Pfizer. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And as you say, they're explicitly telling people not to take ivermectin. So they're not trying to improve their profits either.
Unless like Pfizer and Fauci and the rest of them are such big scary bullies that they have like beat Merck into denying their own products worth. I mean,
that sounds very Fauci. He's very
evil. Fauci. Yes.
Okay. How about this? Try this on for size. This is the Ron Johnson argument. They're safer than dangerous vaccines because over 31 years, if you look at the VAERS system, have you heard about this? This is a very
I know about the VA. Yeah. I know the VAERS.
If you look at the VAERS database, the VIAS database, there have been only 379 deaths associated with ivermectin. But there have been 13,000 associated with COVID vaccines in 1 year. So that proves that ivermectin is actually less safe. So why would
any ivermectin death be recorded on VAERS?
No.
It's not a vaccine.
That's right.
Okay. Right. Okay.
I mean, people might think that we've coordinated on this. We haven't. You are genuinely confused as to why I brought this up, but I'm bringing this up because Ron Johnson.
Yeah, no, I am. I am. Like that's like why don't they record Panadol deaths on VAERS? Because it's not a vaccine.
And also, people weren't taking horse paste until now. Like ivermectin is safe. The pill, it just doesn't help you. The horse paste kills you. That's the difference.
Yes.
And also, like we've said, like 1 trillion times, Ron Johnson, the VIAS system just tabulates who has had some kind of side effect sometime after they've taken a vaccine. It doesn't mean they're connected. If every single friggin' person in America is taking the vaccine, which they are in the process of doing, then anyone who has anything go wrong with them afterwards for any reason could theoretically log it on the VIAS system. So of course it's 13,000 deaths because more than 13,000 people have died for any reason. It's just, anyway.
It's bananas. It's like I stubbed my toe after I got my vaccine. Is that an adverse response that should be recorded?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, how about this one? This is a Rand Paul argument. It's sabotaged by people who hate Donald Trump. I'll give you the quote. The hatred for Trump deranged these people so much that they're unwilling to objectively study it. So the problem is it hasn't objectively studied because they hate Trump.
Okay, well, it's being objectively studied now. So there is a big trial happening, a proper trial. It's being run by Oxford researchers. Can you hear my kids screaming in the background? Because I've got noise cancelling. How annoying is it?
And that's okay. Sorry, keep on going. It's really, it's quite pleasant,
so look,
really.
Look, basically,
are they taking horse paste? Are they taking horse paste?
I sometimes hope so. Just for a moment's peace. No, there is a proper real trial happening right now. It's being run by Oxford researchers. It will give us some good answers as to whether ivermectin is effective or not in people with COVID. And I mean, look, I don't know if those people hate Trump or not.
Okay.
But
well, that's something to look forward to. I should say, by the way, I know you're not going to know this because American politics is my thing, not yours. But Trump has never actually even mentioned it. So I don't know what this has to do with hatred of Trump, because Trump doesn't talk about ivermectin. He talks about vaccines. He talks about actual vaccines. So
yes,
it's
it is a weird link.
Yeah,
it's strange.
And I also know, when I was reading up about this as well, I know there's actually, you talked about with the big study, there's 31 little studies going on at the same time. There's 31 studies going for this drug right now.
Yeah.
And there was a big study recently called the Together trial, which had 1,300 patients. That was halted because they found that ivermectin was basically the same as the placebo as far as preventing hospitalization goes. And the guy who ran it said he would have discontinued it weeks earlier, except for the immense public interest into ivermectin. So he gave it a couple of extra weeks. So it's the direct opposite. The interest in ivermectin is driving these. Do you think there would be 1 million studies into this pill, which doesn't seem to work, if there wasn't all this interest? Like it's like hydroxychloroquine again. There are 1 million studies into that last year for exactly the same reason.
Yeah. No, there's no shortage of research happening into it. It's just that it's not delivering the results that people want. So then they say that the research is being suppressed.
Okay. Have you heard any other interesting arguments or pieces of bullshit about ivermectin that you want to share, or anything at all, really? Because I feel like we've talked about this enough.
No, I'm done.
No?
Let's see what happens to Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
No,
well, he took everything. He took absolutely everything.
So again, so if he survives and whatever, like, how are we meant to know what it was that worked?
He will, because he took Regeneron, which works.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's this might help ivermectin's reputation because he'll be fine. That's what Trump took. It's not 100% successful. It's like 70% successful. Like 70.
Yeah.
But he's a healthy guy and he's not that old, so I'm sure he'll be fine.
Yeah, it is weird that like ivermectin's the one that everyone's latched onto when there are other kind of more obscure drugs that actually have a bit more evidence to them for effectiveness than ivermectin. Like you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, I'm about to talk.
I can't remember what it was. You tell me what it was, because I can't remember the name of it.
If you watch the podcast for another 2 minutes, you'll hear me say it again, because I'm about to tell everyone about this. I try out this stuff on Kirsten before I get on the podcast. There are a bunch of little stuff out there which do work, and well, at least they work sometimes. They're not complete placebos, and but people fixate on particular wonder drugs, which is very weird. But anyway, thank you so much for allowing your children to self-harm while you were talking to us about ivermectin.
I really apologize for that.
No. I appreciate the time, and thank you very much for sharing. Well, at least you got to share your research with someone. Hey, Kirsten, because it didn't get on the show.
Thanks, Chaz. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Back to you, Chaz.
Thanks for that, Chaz. Brilliant work. Love your dungeon. Do you have anything to say, Dave, about either ivermectin or about this situation which I'm describing, where it's a tribal issue with Republicans, not an actual electoral partisan issue?
I don't really have anything more to say other than that I actually have to go.
That's short and to the point.
Which is probably what you're going to be saying a lot if you take ivermectin as a remedy.
That is definitely the case. Well, whether you say it or not, you will be going if you take ivermectin. You might be too busy running to go rather than talking about it, but yes. Do you have anything else you want to add before you go, Dave, about any topic whatsoever?
No, I'll see you next week.
Okay, see you next week, Dave. Thanks, mate.
All right.
I am just going to finish off here with one more thing.
All right, I'll see you.
Okay, see you, Dave. Bye-bye. For you guys, I'm just going to finish with one more thing, which is if you want to take an alternative remedy, can I give you a bit of advice? Don't take horse paste. There's a study of 3,000 people quite recently. Not yet peer-reviewed, but it's a proper study. Like, there's a lot of bullshit studies out there. This was a proper study. It's about a drug called fluvoxamine, which is an obsession compulsion drug. And it's already FDA approved, fully approved, okay? If you gave people fluvoxamine early on, the first couple of days that they were diagnosed with COVID, they were 31% less likely to end up hospitalised and about 3% less likely to end up on the ventilator. Now, that's not as good as Regeneron and the antibodies. Ideally, you'd be vaccinated, so you'd be less concerned about hospitalisation and ventilation. But if you're going to take a home remedy, well, that one at least is not dangerous. It can be prescribed off label, so you can get it from a doctor. I don't know if it's even available in Australia, but in America at least, you can go to a doctor. It can be prescribed off label. You can be You can take it legitimately. You don't need to ring up dodgy people online to get it. It comes in a cheap pill, so you can take it yourself. No doctors, no hospitals, and it won't kill you, like horse paste will. So if you're going to, well, first of all, get vaccinated. But if you get COVID before you're vaccinated and you want to take something, and you can't get Regeneron, because Regeneron is better than fluvoxamine, then at least go to the doctor and ask them to have a look at the research that's out there about fluvoxamine, and then see if they'll prescribe you fluvoxamine, and it might help you out. But go to the doctor, and don't go to the vet, and don't eat horse paste, please. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for your guest interviewing, and thank you so much, Chaz, for guest interviewing the guest interview subject. I'm totally confused. I've had too much horse paste. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.